Hey y'all, my name is Dawn, and the part that I got for this project was communication with children. So the first question that I got was, what info can you find regarding how parents communicated with children in the past, and what was the expectations for children when their parents communicated with them? I just wanted to start off that this had a huge role, socioeconomic status had a huge role currently in the present day and also in the past regarding communication. Parents that were on the lower socioeconomic status that weren't as wealthy didn't have access to transportation, nor they didn't have telephones to call family members, doctors, and stuff like that. And also, back in the day, divorce was very negatively looked upon. Currently, as you can tell, like divorce is more common now, and people typically have more than one marriage, such as getting a divorce and getting remarried. While in the past, that wasn't as common because it was just had that negative connotation to it. So in the past, it just wasn't there. And then in the 1900s, the woman's role in a family was still defined by her husband, and like what we talked in our class about the nuclear family, such as like woman, like the woman's being the primary caretakers in the family. And you were always told to respect your elders and listen to what they have to say and like follow in the footsteps that they tell you to do, such as, um, you know, our age now, we typically want to do what we want for our lives, and our parents are there to support us and guide us and becoming more independent. While in the past, parents were more like, you should do this, and we're kind of starting away from that. Number two, what are some consequences of poor parent-child communication? Some of the things that can be a result of poor parent-child communication would be having a distant relationship with one another and not being able to express any ideas or thoughts that you may have in your head that you want to say to your family or your parents. You also don't feel welcomed in your family, and you will have decreased mental, emotional, and physical health just because you don't have that support in your family where you're able to communicate frequently with them because there might be poor communication amongst the family. And number three is what has changed or is changing about how how parents communicate with children. Um, One of them is the use of technology is more accessible. This makes it easier for us to use social media, to constantly check up on our family members and our parents. Your parents are able to text you, call you anytime they want in the day, while in the past they weren't able to do that. So that communication is either more frequent, where it is strengthening the relationship, but also can be negative. And it's very different now because communication styles with parents to child because there's different conflicting advices, such as like should your child be sleeping in the crib or should they be co-sleeping with you? Um, this is just something I found which is very interesting because there is a lot of conversations about how parents should be parenting. And then both parents are more likely to work now, where a sense of guilt for parents affects the parent child relationship. But I feel like with technology itself, this changes it because parents are able to still communicate with their child even if they're at work. And then something that is also changing about how parents communicate with children is that parents are now having delayed parenthood. We're choosing to become parents at a later date where we're more mature, we're more stable, financially stable, mentally, emotional, physically stable. And parents are now more educated with a bachelor's degree or college degree in general. And there's reduced birth rates. There's so many resources for parents nowadays to be more educated and to becoming better parents. And number four is, why is the term effective communication something that is becoming more mainstream with parents now? Um, it creates a constant way to communicate effectively amongst the child and parent to strengthen the relationship. It not only benefits the child and parent, but everyone that they interact with, because having this effective communication truly strengthens what you have with any relationship that you have. And when parents communicate effectively as well, their child is more likely to mimic that and also communicate very effectively as well. When we're kids or something, you see another, let's say as a kid, I saw my mom or something like this is made up, hit my sibling, and then As I grew up, I was more likely to do that in school or at home, and it's just that mimicking that a child does. And this kind of also plays in with that communication. Number five, what are some tips for effective communication with children? One of them is start communicating effectively while children are young. Parents are starting to do this while before the student can, not the student, the child can barely speak. A child is able to see effective communication at a young age, and it's like children are able to see how parents interact with one another at a young age too. So this is like very important to really start that effective communication early on. And when you're communicating with your child, you want to communicate on your child's level. You want to be reaching their level that is physical and verbally, using the same language that they would use, kneeling if you have to, talking to your child. You want to also eliminate any distractions that you have so you can give them your undivided attention, but they can also give you their attention to you. And you want to learn how to fully listen before speaking and making eye contact and just maintaining while keeping your mouth closed. You want to be able to fully understand your child and tell them that you are listening and that they're being heard, but you also want to keep it brief. And if you want to ask questions, you need to ask the right questions to help the conversation move along positively. You don't want to use anything that would make it negative. And you want to explain information completely in the full content and be polite while you're at it. And while you're doing this, you want to express your own feelings and ideas when communicating with your child. And if there's ever any conflict, you want to be using I statements and looking for different creative ways to solve the problems. Some ideas to help children develop their listening skills is that there's so many creative ways that you can develop their listening skills. You can read stories with your child, you can cook with them, baking cookies, such a fun activity. They're listening to you and you're like, okay, can you do this for me? And they're doing it for you. You can create lists of questions, play a Kahoot, have interesting conversations with them, just getting to know them a little bit more, their thoughts, their interests, their ideas. And you can also play different games such as like board games or like Simon Says, depending on their age. But these are just really great ways because you're still following instructions, so their listening skills are still there. And what is recommended by the American number seven is what is recommended by the Ac- Academy of Pediatrics. Strength-based approach is encouraging family growth over time. This encourages shared decisions amongst the family and the pediatrician, making families solve their problems with their clinician. And then the second one is motivation interviewing. This is a method to exchange intrinsic motivation to change health behavior by exploring and resolving ambivalence. And the last one is plain language. This is just a strategy that works both for parents and a child in written and verbal language to make information easier for both of them to understand on. And number eight, any additional information resources or helpful tips, tricks for parents. Some helpful additional information is that um, communication styles can be different amongst parents themselves, but also it's a thing that you work on together. And there can also be different languages spoken at home, and cultural and diverse background households may have different ways of communication. And especially in parents with different ethnicities and cultures, this may clash. So before having any children, you want to make sure you want to express to your partner which ways of communication is more effective to strengthen the family and your relationship amongst one another. Thank you.